My dear friends, I'd like to speak to you today about Catholic education. I, as a priest, have been negligent in this over the years. We have much to be thankful for the Catholic education of this country. And Ohio has been one of the leading states in the battle for educating our children. One of the foremost advocates in education was Ohio, led by her bishops, Bishop Fenwick, Bishop Baden of Kentucky, many other bishops of Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Michigan. Bishop Fenwick knew of the excellence and the necessity of Catholic education in general, and for the individual souls in particular. His and all of the bishops of Ohio, they met in council many times in Cincinnati and drew up plans for Catholic education. Bishop Fenwick, his initial desire was to have a Catholic school in every parish for every child. He started and invited sisters from different religious orders to Ohio to start schools. He initially had some success on separate occasions, with one school opening with one sister and 3 laywomen. On another occasion, he managed to borrow sisters from Kentucky, the Dominican sisters, and start another school. The first school had about 24 students, and it lasted until the death of the sister, and the laywomen disbanded. The second school lasted until the Dominican sisters were called to Emmitsburg, Maryland, to assist at a school there under St. Francis Xavier Cabrini. Bishop Fenwick was the founder of Xavier College in 1831, and he labored well in the cause of Catholic education. Many owe the blessings of Catholic education in this state to Bishop Fenwick, who died in 1832. Don't worry, I'm not going to stay in 1832. We're going to progress. John Baptist Purcell, another Catholic bishop. He became Cincinnati's new bishop. He was installed in 1833. And these next few years was the immigration of nations, not Attila the Hun, but the Irish and the Germans from Europe. These German people were willing to make any sacrifice to see that their children received a Catholic education. As the rise of Catholic education became so prominent, because of the unshakable resolve of devout Catholic parents, so did anti-Catholic groups, the Know-Nothings, the Native Americans, and we're not talking Indians. This is what they call themselves. They began to attack Catholic schools. They even mobbed the papal legate who came to Ohio. Bishop Spalding declared that the question of religious education was, in the minds of the fathers of the councils, the Catholic bishops of Ohio, the test of fidelity or infidelity to God. The fathers of this council governing Kentucky, Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, and West Virginia proclaimed, "Earnestly do we desire to see a parochial school in connection with every Catholic parish in this province." With all the influences constantly working to unsettle the faith of our children and to pervert their tender minds from the religion of their fathers, we exhort you to contribute with every means to the ability for every parish to afford a school. One cannot sever education from religion. Bishop Purcell, he praised the German Catholics on their Catholic education, especially the attendance of daily Mass and the unified singing of Catholic hymns by the children of God. Under Bishop Purcell, whom Purcell Marian School was named after, came religious from France, from Belgium, from Switzerland. Religious men and women came at a great sacrifice to secure the Catholic education of the children, whose parents were zealous to secure the salvation for their children. These parents were uncompromising. They were not reeds shaken in the winds by worldly pursuits, by sports, by what they perceived to be a better education, a bigger school, more community. Although the Catholic school system in Ohio showed great growth, there were considerable difficulties. There were times when the less serious Catholic would defect to public schools or to Protestant schools. Two of the first bishops of Ohio considered the necessity of a Catholic school as a matter of course, so that wherever Catholic churches were built, the Catholic school was sure to follow. Sometimes the Catholic school preceded the church building. Sometimes Mass was held in the school. If they had a room like a gymnasium, Mass would be held there. And then there would be established a church. That should indicate to us how important the bishops saw Catholic education. The education of the religious was paramount. The bishops required that their teachers have 4-year degrees, generally speaking. Over 75% of the religious teachers had degrees, whereas in the public school system during Purcell's time, only 66% of the public school teachers had 4-year degrees. The Catholic Church has always taught that the spiritual formation of the student is most important, the most important consideration and aim of the teacher. It's very sad when parents lose sight of this truth and replace the spiritual focus with social and athletic aspirations. Catholics had to have permission from the bishop of the diocese to send their children to a non-Catholic school. Explicit permission for each child. And if they didn't receive that permission, they were to be refused Holy Communion. They were to be refused absolution in the confessional. In 1928, after uniting all the Catholic institutions of learning in Ohio, then did the public school system recognize the degrees awarded to Catholic teachers in the Catholic teachers' colleges. In the early 20th century, the educational training soared, the Catholic educational training soared in the United States. After World War II, the lay teacher became a necessity due to the tax for public schools, which was forced upon Catholics, Protestants, and Jewish families who could barely afford to pay for their religious schools. The resilient Catholic did what they had to do to support their religious schools. Some misguided and tepid Catholics fled to the free public schools, which the fathers called the unchristian schools. And this was the beginning of the plan to destroy the Catholic school system. They couldn't financially do it, so they destroyed it from within by the philosophy, by the worldly influence that we see in so-called Catholic schools today. The Catholic school system could never afford the fringe benefits of retirement, fabulous salaries, They relied upon teachers who were not looking for all this, but who were motivated by a sense of spiritual duty to aid the parish school in any way possible. These teachers knew that God would supply their needs 100-fold if they would instruct the little ones. Lay teachers have always made a tremendous contribution to the formation of pupils in Catholic schools. Students take for granted moral goodness and practical Catholic living on the part of the religious, but when they see this in their lay teachers, it impresses them even more. Lay teachers have a definite place in the field of Catholic education, says Father Ryan, who was the superintendent in the Catholic school system in Ohio. Lay teachers can add what religious do not see, for the religious are removed from the world. Pope Pius XI said, "It fills our souls with consolation and gratitude towards the divine goodness to see side by side with religious men and women engaged in teaching such a large number of excellent lay teachers, calling them a most excellent and powerful auxiliary of Catholic action." End quote. The provincial councils of Ohio have decreed that common schools were objectionable. When they call them common school, they're referring to public schools. Were objectionable, that Catholics could not attend them without grave danger to their faith, and the opposition to parochial schools began to manifest itself. Bishop Purcell attended this councils of the bishops and was the chairman on the committee on the Catholic education of youth and allied matters. Amongst the 25 decrees enacted by this General Council, the 13th dealt with education. The bishops of the Midwest remained in an uncompromising attitude of fidelity to the principles of Catholic schools for Catholic children. Bishop Spalding of Kentucky says, and I quote, "The question of religious education was, in the minds of the fathers of the councils, a test of fidelity or infidelity to God, and their earnest convictions on the subject had been productive of the most important practical results, as history and present conditions of that providence abundantly prove." Cleveland was so Catholic at one time. Cincinnati was so Catholic at one time. Northern Kentucky was so Catholic at one time. I go on and quote, "The Council of Cincinnati admonishes pastors to do all they possibly could to keep Catholic children from attending public schools as a danger to faith and morals, and at the same time exhort parents to give support to the parochial schools. We admonish pastors of souls again and again to make every effort to keep boys and girls committed to their care, meaning parishioners, from frequenting those schools which they cannot attend without grave danger to their faith and morals. And at the same time, we exhort parents to aid and sustain in a fitting manner the parochial schools and others under Catholic direction." Schools where several parishes collected together and had education, boys' schools and girls' schools. Bishop Spalding was commissioned to write 3 pastoral letters for the 3 successive councils. After counseling the clergy, the pastoral letter exhorted the laity to be firm in their faith and to guard their children from the countless dangers that beset them. This was nearly 100 years ago. The countless dangers that beset them. Of course, these dangers don't exist today. We all know they do. The fathers wrote, and I quote, "We beseech you, Christian parents, by the bowels of the mercy of God, that you be ever mindful of your solemn obligation to guard your children from a danger so imminent and to rear them up both by word and example in the knowledge and practice of their religious duties. Else you will have to give an awful account of their souls at the dread bar of God, who will demand their blood at your hands. The bishops didn't mince words. Religion is an essential element, and even more than that, it's the very foundation of all sound education. Religious instruction should be combined with the elements of merely human learning, that our youth may grow up in the fear of God, which is the beginning of wisdom. It is religion alone that can effectually curb the evil concupiscence which we all unhappily inherit from our first parents, and its holy influence alone can check those headlong passions which else would precipitate thoughtless youth into the abyss of vice. And we see that all around us. Sometimes it's hard to see a difference between our Catholic youth and non-Catholic youth. Children reared up and educated without suitable religious instruction and training often become, by their perverseness, the pest of that society which they should be the ornament and support. And instead of being the solace of their parents in declining age, they sadden their hearts by reckless vice and by stubborn disobedience. I'm still quoting. We beseech you then, Christian parents, to bear this solemn obligation constantly in mind, and to provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the discipline and the correction of the Lord. The council goes on to say, cooperate zealously with your pastors in promoting religious instruction of your children. Teach them daily at home and see that they attend punctually the classes for catechetical instruction. Above all, encouraging the erection and the support of parochial schools in which religious principles are inculcated along with the elements of learning. Education is not to be severed from religion, which is its main support and its solid foundation, education's solid foundation. The creation of Catholic schools in many respects as an important object as the building of new churches. Indeed, the parochial school often precedes the parish church. And they go on and once again comment on the German congregations. Our excellent German congregations leave nothing to desire on the subject. The children attend Mass every morning. They sing with one accord the praises of God. They go from church to the school. They are accustomed to cleanliness and neatness in dress, to punctuality and order, to diligence and affection, and affectionate respect for their parents, clergy, and teachers. We have nothing more at heart than that the pupils of our English schools should imitate those of the German schools. The fathers of the council have decreed that all pastors of souls are obliged under pain of mortal sin to provide, when possible, a Catholic school in each parish or congregation under their care. And in order that each ordinary may know what the parishes have this obligation, they decree by the Council of Trent that the rectors be ordered to render each year to their ordinaries an exact account of all the revenues in their churches. In speaking of the duties of the lay people, the pastoral letter impressed upon them the obligation of giving substantial aid and cooperation. That cooperation also means help in teaching. For the erection of schoolhouses, wherein your children may receive a sound Christian education under the sanctions of the church and under the shadow of the holy sanctuary. What is the duty of Catholics with regards to the right education of youth? In the first place, they must teach them the catechism, or send them where they will learn it. The Catholic school and to the church, to their own school and to their own church, not another. Secondly, they must provide for them teachers who will know how to teach, who will give good example, who will not suffer their children to be exposed to spiritual dangers. The children must be furnished with books and instruction, which will explain to them the end for which they were created. The fathers express the need and the desire for a body of men and women who will devote themselves to the education of youth, from the most perfect, the most sustaining of all motives, pure love. Catholic education was the most vital and necessary question for the fathers of the council. They exhort us to promote everywhere, according to your means, the erection of schools where your children may be educated in learning and piety, free from the contagion of the dangerous example and corrupt or false principles of the world. Our schools are filled with false principles, not our school, our schools. The children are the hope of the Republic and of the Church in the next generation. The Council of Baltimore, which is over this council in Ohio, said if you do not send your children to Catholic schools, you can watch them walk away from the faith one by one. We've seen a good deal of that here. You can watch them walk away from the traditional Mass one by one. As religious training is not possible in public schools, which non-Catholic religious training can only produce lifeless souls, dead to the faith, so parents are willing to sacrifice the religious education of their children for merely worldly convenience. We must praise the parents who maintain a strong faith in this Cold War, which, as President Lincoln said, a world which has forgotten God. Generally speaking, where there is an adequate Catholic school, parents cannot without sin, often serious sin, send their children to public schools. Impossibility is the only reason which excuses the parish priest for maintaining and running a Catholic parish school. Except for offering the holy sacrifice of the Mass, except for administering the sacraments, the priest shall place the care of his school before all other duties of his office. The establishment of the Catholic school is his eminent obligation. He should not rest until his flourishing school excel the public school in education. The fathers teach us that those who contumaciously send their children to a school which is a proximate occasion of losing the faith cannot be absolved. This is not just the sentiments of the Ohio bishops. This was endorsed by Pope Leo XIII. He approved of the legislation of the Fourth Council in Ohio. Since the security of the faith is in no way provided for unless children receive Catholic instruction, we admonish all the faithful not to omit anything or refuse to undergo any sacrifice necessary for their most important purpose, the Catholic education of their children. Such education can scarcely ever be given without a Catholic school. And therefore upon each pastor, together with his people, there rests an obligation of establishing such a school, which should be of even greater concern than the beauty and the size of the parish church. My dear friends, I know not all of you can send your kids to Catholic schools. Those who cannot, I encourage to homeschool. But not every individual here, parent, mother, or father, is capable of homeschooling. I do encourage you to pursue the Catholic education of your children. We have a few most wonderful teachers here at St. Therese who have no children themselves in the school and yet sacrifice day in and day out for the Catholic education of the children of this parish. We must see that we give them everything we can. The school system in this country was at its zenith in the 40s and 50s of last century. And then it went downhill preparing for Vatican II. Let us do what we can. We can all pray for. We can financially support. We can send our children to the Catholic school of our parish. You have shown yourself most generous and strong in faith for many years. But as we've observed in other cities, this next generation, I was talking to 3 men, very successful men, this past week. They're in their 60s and 70s. And they said the young men and women in their 20s and 30s do not have that same understanding that they had to give their children a Catholic education. We must take it most seriously, and God will bless us for such efforts. Thank you. God love you, and God bless you. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen.